you didn't always have this blog. There was one incident in your professional career that sort of led you to begin the blog. It was the first time you were arrested, correct?
Right.
Why don't you lead me through that? Where were you at the time?
Okay, in 2007, I was writing for a website called Category 305, which is no longer in existence, but I was working on a story about Biscayne Boulevard, which is a street in Miami that's known for its prostitution, is known for its drugs.
Sure.
And basically they're going through this whole revitalization where they have new businesses and coffee shops and bars, and that was the whole story. The whole story was, okay, there's still an element of the crime, and it still there is. But
so you're on location trying to get some shots of.
I'm walking around back and forth on that street, I've done it for a couple of days, 3 nights in a row, talking to prostitutes, talking to business owners, talking to people who live there, and just taking pictures, writing it down. I'm going to have this great story, and I saw these cops making an arrest, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to take a picture. I put on my 70 to 200 lens. I had 2 cameras on me, and so I started taking pictures with a kind of a long lens. And my goal was to take a few pictures and move on.
Right.
And when I took their picture, one of the officers goes, well, can we help you? No, I'm doing my job. I'm Carlos Miller, I'm a journalist, you know, just do your job. I'm doing my job. She goes, well, this is a private matter. And when she said that's a private matter, I said, well, this is a public road. And that's what it all started. And those cops, there were 5 officers there. They came up to me.
They left the
arrestee
behind.
They left the dude that they were harassing. It turned out to be, it was an accident. It turned out to be an accident where he was refusing to sign a traffic citation.
Okay.
I didn't know that at the time. I learned that later. So now I'm thinking, well, they're probably mad. You know, later I find out they're probably mad that he wouldn't sign a citation, and they're coming after this guy with his camera.
What did they do to you?
Well, they ordered me out of the area. They escorted me across the street. I kept taking pictures, and they told me to leave the area. And when I continued taking their pictures, they jumped on me, they pounced on me, they slammed my head to the ground, they threatened to tase me, they destroyed a flash, they cracked a lens.
Now you have some photographs from this event where they were escorting you.
Well, yeah, I do. And the main picture, the most popular picture, is the one that's in the header of my blog. It's the one that, the last picture I took before I was arrested. And you could see the street behind him. The reason I really like that picture, and this is before I got into video. I didn't get into video later, until a couple of years, a year or two later, but you see the street behind the police officers, but they charged me with standing in the middle of the street. They charged me with obstructing traffic. They said their own fiction that they created on the arrest report was saying, yeah, well, he was blocking traffic. It wasn't about the photography. It was nothing to do with the cameras. He was blocking traffic and talking.
So they had to actually imagine charges because, in fact, photography is not a crime.
Photography is not a crime.
Where can we find your blog, Carlos?
You go to carlosmiller.com or you Google photography is not a crime.
All right. And so you have quite a following. You kind of keep metrics of visitors to your blog, and so give me some statistics.
Well, I mean, I've been doing it for 4.5 years now, and in July we had 540,000 page views, which was a record for me.
It's pretty good.
Yeah,
we call that 500 million billion here at the JTown.tv. Carlos, you weren't only arrested once, all right? So you went through that event, and then take me through your second encounter with
and a couple of years later, I was down on Miami Beach writing a story about the Memorial Day weekend, which is very controversial down here. It's the hip hop weekend. And
on South Beach.
Right, on South Beach.
Right.
So, and I write for Miami Beach 401. At this point, I'm working for them. So I'm going down there and let's see what the hype is about. I'm going down there with my cameras, interviewing people, doing everything. Because, you know, a little background is there's basically a lot of black people that go down. A lot of black people that go down to South Beach, and a lot of non-black people fear that. We freak out, we have to leave, you know, everything's going to hell. My job, my intention was to go there and see, well, what is the story? What's going on here? And I did, and I spent hours there. I went out there and interviewed everybody. I took pictures, and on the way home, I saw this cop leaning against his car. And I thought, wow, that's a good photo, because it shows that this weekend is uneventful. It shows that
there are the cops sitting around, not having much to do.
And I don't have a problem with that. I mean, he was there, he was hanging out, you know, he was keeping a watchful eye, but he was kind of chilled.
Right.
That was the photo that I thought would define the weekend. I took the photo, he came up to me and said, delete that photo. I told him I'm not going to delete that photo. There's no way in hell I'm going to delete the photo. He walked back, I walked back after him to ask for his name, because I was going to put that in the article. And that's when I was arrested. They're like, oh, you know, you're stupid, bro. You're
Requesting
stupid.
officer's name, is that the charge on that one?
No. They said initially I was a public intoxication. It was changed to resisting arrest without violence. And because they had no evidence that I was drunk, and they really had no evidence that I was resisting arrest, but that's an easier charge to stick. The cop did not show up to court because at this point, my blog had been around for 2 years. They knew who I was. Not when I was arrested, but when I started writing about it, they realized, oh, wow,